What do you do when the one who always knew what to do is no longer beside you? Maybe that moment has already come. Maybe it still feels far away. Either way, I want to sit beside you for a little while, not as a voice of authority, but as someone who understands what it means to lose the rhythm of a life lived together. If you've recently lost your husband, or you're imagining how life might unfold if that day comes, this video is for you, because the truth is, there are 5 quiet, costly mistakes that many strong, loving women make after their husband passes away, not because they're foolish, but because no one warned them until it's too late. And those mistakes, they can take away your financial peace, your emotional healing, and the future you deserve. By the end of this video, you'll know how to protect yourself from decisions made in heartbreak, from pressures that don't come from love, and from the lie that your story ends with his. You are still here. You are still becoming, and you deserve to live the rest of your life with clarity, dignity, and quiet joy. Let's begin with something no one tells you. The hidden weight behind saying, "I'm fine," when your heart is still breaking. They say that time heals. But no one talks about what time feels like when the house is too quiet, the phone doesn't ring like it used to, and your mornings start not with a kiss or a shared cup of coffee, but with a silence that feels heavier than sleep. After the funeral, everyone said Marilyn was doing well. She's strong, they told each other, and in many ways, she had always handled things gracefully, never one to break down in public, always the one who held others up. At 69, after losing the man she spent more than 4 decades with, she said what most women say when their hearts are breaking in ways they can't describe. "I'm fine." She kept saying it at the grocery store, at church, even to her daughter when she checked in every Sunday afternoon. But one evening, something happened. Marilyn dropped a spoon while drying the dishes. Just a small, silly thing. It clanged loudly against the tile floor, and suddenly, she was on her knees, sobbing into her hands as if her entire world had shattered, not because of the spoon, of course, but because everything she had been holding together for weeks, maybe months, had finally cracked open. What no one tells you is that sometimes the most dangerous thing after loss is the pressure to be okay. Society celebrates composure. People praise you for being so strong, when in truth, all you want is someone to sit quietly beside you and say, "You don't have to be." We've been taught to perform strength, to keep busy, to smile politely. But what if real strength is simply waking up in the morning, brushing your hair, and admitting, even just to yourself, "Today hurts"? What if healing begins not with fixing, but with feeling? You see, grief doesn't arrive all at once. It lingers in corners. It waits in the scent of his favorite jacket, the voice of a song on the radio, the empty chair at the dinner table. You're not weak because these things bring you to tears. You're human. And those tears, they honor what you've lost. So, my dear, if you're not fine today, that's okay. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself unravel a little, because in that unraveling, something soft and sacred begins to take root. You don't have to rush toward healing. You don't have to pretend you're okay. You've already proven your strength by surviving this far. Now, you get to be gentle with yourself. Let that be enough for now. Now let's talk about the quiet moment. When clearing out a drawer feels harder than saying goodbye at the funeral, Carol thought she was doing the right thing. 2 weeks after Tom passed, she opened the windows wide, aired out the house, and began boxing up his clothes. She folded his sweaters with trembling hands. But she kept folding. She took down their wedding photo from the hallway and replaced it with a landscape painting someone had given her. Something neutral. She changed the curtains, the ones Tom had always liked, The golden ones that made the whole living room glow at sunset felt too full of memory, too hard to look at. People around her praised her. "You're strong," they said. "It's good you're moving on." And she smiled softly, said thank you, nodded, and kept going. But one night, she opened a drawer in the bedroom and found a small bundle of birthday cards. His handwriting stared back at her, like a whisper from the past, and just like that, the breath was knocked from her chest. She sat on the edge of the bed with the cards pressed against her heart, and for the first time in days, she let herself cry, not just tears of missing him, but tears of something deeper. She realized she had cleared out the house before her soul had even had a chance to say goodbye. No one tells you how complex it is, the way grief moves through objects. Sometimes, it's easier to remove the visible things, to quiet the echoes in the room, but what remains inside you is not so easily packed away. The scent on a jacket, the ring left on the nightstand, the quiet crease in a pillow, these are not just items, they are pieces of your love story. And no one else has the right to tell you when to let them go. You don't have to rush to erase him from the space you once shared. The world may nudge you to move on, to freshen things up, to start over. But your heart doesn't run on a timeline. Let it choose. Let it keep what still feels sacred. If there's a drawer that still holds his letters, keep it closed a little longer. If there's a sweater that still smells like him, wrap yourself in it on the hard nights. And if there's something that brings both pain and warmth at once, hold it anyway. That's how love lingers, between the ache and the comfort. Forgive the parts of him that were imperfect. Honor the parts of him that made your life brighter. And above all, don't be afraid to keep loving him in your own quiet way. Whether or not there is another life after this one, you had this life together, and that, in itself, is rare and beautiful. Let the memories stay. Let them breathe. They don't need to be sorted out like old linen. They need to be held gently, like the last light of day. And then there's the noise of advice, loud, constant, often well-meaning, but rarely tuned to the voice of your own soul. After her husband died, Lily kept herself composed. She handled the arrangements, made polite conversation at the service, and even remembered to send thank you notes. People said she was so put together, but what they didn't see was how often she would sit alone at night, not crying, just still, listening to the silence he used to fill. Her world hadn't collapsed in one dramatic moment. It had gently unraveled. In the quiet, not long after, her neighbor stopped by with a business card. "He's the guy who helped me after Bob died," he said. "Smart, fast, trustworthy. You need someone like him." A cousin called and said, "You need to downsize. That house is too big. Be smart." A friend insisted she invest the insurance money quickly, so it wouldn't go to waste. Everyone had advice. Everyone had opinions. But no one had sat long enough to ask her what she truly wanted. No one had listened for her quieter instincts, the ones that rise only when the noise fades. You see, women like Lily have lived long lives full of caregiving, decision-making, and sacrifice. Their strength often makes others forget that they too need protecting. It's not that she didn't understand finances or couldn't make a plan. It's that her life partner, the one she used to bounce ideas off, the one who knew how she liked to think things through, wasn't there anymore. And in that space of absence, others rushed in with urgency. That didn't come from love, but from their own expectations. What people forget is that a woman's intuition, especially after 65, is not something fragile. It's something earned, comes from years of listening, not just to others, but to herself. And that voice, though quiet, is rarely wrong. But grief makes it harder to hear. The mind is fogged. The heart is heavy. And that's when decisions should move slow. Not fast, because the choices made in this tender time will echo for years to come, not only in the bank, but in the soul. So if you're in that moment now, receiving advice from every corner, feeling pressure to act, to decide, to move, pause, breathe, ask yourself, does this feel aligned with who I am, with who we were, with what I truly need? And then do something that belongs only to you. Sing a song you love, just because it lifts your heart. Plant a flower that reminds you of a vacation you once took. Together, volunteer to cook at the local center. Not because you have to, but because it brings life back into your hands. These aren't distractions. They're reminders that your life still belongs to you. The next chapter doesn't have to be loud or impressive. It only needs to be yours. Sometimes, giving becomes a way to feel needed again. But what if you're giving away your peace to feel remembered? After her husband passed, Teresa found herself in a quiet house that once held so much life. The phone still rang. But now it was her daughter asking for help with a new car loan. Her grandson texted about college expenses. The insurance money had just come in. And without even thinking twice, she started giving $5,000 to each grandchild, a signature on her daughter's loan. I just wanted to feel needed, she whispered once to a friend. When asked why she did it all so quickly, Teresa had always been a giver. When the kids were young, she clipped coupons, worked late shifts, and made meals stretch, because that's what mothers do. Giving, back then, was survival and love intertwined. And later, when they were grown and starting families of their own, her support took new forms: advice, encouragement, a hot meal dropped off unannounced. But something shifted after her husband died. The giving didn't feel like support anymore. It felt like holding on, like proving she still had value in a world that no longer made space for her the way it used to. What no one tells you is that there comes a time in a woman's life when her giving must evolve. The kind of love her children and grandchildren need at that stage is not financial, it's emotional wisdom, gentle presence, and quiet stability. They need her to be well, to be safe, to model what aging with grace and dignity looks like, and she can only do that if she protects herself first. Teresa realized this the hard way when her roof started leaking 6 months later, and the repair cost overwhelmed her. The same children who had accepted her generosity with open arms now hesitated. They had their own bills, their own young families. No one could help. That night, as she sat by the window, listening to the steady drip of water in a bucket, she finally saw the truth. She had given too much, not out of abundance, but out of fear that if she stopped being useful, she'd be forgotten. But love was never meant to be earned with money. It is meant to be felt in the ways we show up, in the stories we tell at the dinner table, in the calm we offer when the world feels unsteady, in simply being there, full of memory, full of care. So, if you are walking through this chapter, unsure of how much to give or when to say no, remember that your presence is the greatest gift of all. You have given your children a lifetime already. Now is the season to receive respect, peace, and the quiet joy of being exactly who you are, without needing to prove a thing. But what if life isn't over? What if a single new beginning, however small, can awaken something still glowing inside you? After her husband passed, Ruth didn't know who she was without him for over 40 years. Her life had been shaped by shared routines, private jokes, little looks across the dinner table that needed no explanation. They were each other's map. When he was gone, it wasn't just the house that felt empty, it was her sense of direction. Friends meant well when they told her she could start over, but she didn't want to start over. She wanted to feel like she still mattered. Then, One afternoon, while browsing at the community center bulletin board, she saw a flyer for a watercolor class. It had been decades since she held a brush. On a whim, really a whisper from within, she signed up. On the first day, her hands trembled so much. She could barely hold the paint. She was the oldest person in the room by 20 years. She sat quietly in the back, unsure why she was even there. But by the third week, she painted a sunrise, something about the colors soft orange, fading blue. The quiet promise of beginning moved her in a way she hadn't felt in months. She cried, not out of sadness, but because she realized she still had beauty left inside her. She just needed a way to let it out. What Ruth discovered is something every woman deserves to hear. Your life is not over. You are not invisible. You are not someone whose story has ended. You are someone standing in the doorway of a new chapter. It may not look like what you expected. It may be quieter, slower, softer, but it can still be deeply meaningful, filled with purpose, with connection, with joy. You don't need to change the world to matter. Try something this month that brings you back to yourself. Maybe it's planting a small herb garden in your kitchen window. Maybe it's joining a group that reads poetry aloud, or helping in a classroom where children will hang on every story you tell. Maybe it's volunteering at a senior center, where you'll not only serve meals, but also share laughter with someone who hasn't been called by name all week. These are not small things. They are acts of healing for others, yes, but also for you. When you do something new, something just for you, you begin to remind yourself and everyone around you that your life is still yours, that you are still capable, still creative, still needed, and perhaps most importantly, still loved. You haven't been forgotten. Not by your family, not by this world, and certainly not by the part of you that still wants to live fully. This is not the end. This is your time, not a leftover life, but a new one that belongs to you. My dear, if you've walked with me through these stories, I hope you see something now that even in loss, your life is not less. It's simply different. The love you shared, the memories you built, the pain you've carried, none of it disappears. It all becomes part of the wisdom you hold now. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything just by being here, by waking up and choosing to keep living with grace. You've already done something remarkable. There is still color in your days, still kindness to give, still laughter waiting in quiet corners. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. And you are certainly not done. This chapter may look quieter, softer, more reflective, but it's still yours, and it can still be beautiful in ways you never expected. Let it be. Let yourself be. You are worthy of that, and so much more. If this message touched something quiet in you, consider sharing it with someone who may need the same reminder today. And if you'd like to walk this journey together a little longer, you're always welcome here. You don't have to figure it all out alone. Sometimes, just listening, just being seen, is the first step toward healing.